Hipyo, I'm begging you, please try the Aula F75.
Fine, I'll try the Aula F75. God, let me just break it open. Oh, I get it now. You were right, but there's just one problem, and it's that this might be better. Let's talk about that.
I'm not gonna waste your time. The Aula F75 is really good. I mean, just listen to this. Wow. But then, why is this video so long? Why is this video so long? Howdy hey, I'm Hipyo, and in my quest to find the best budget keyboard, this one has been asked for over 5,000 times. That's not a joke, literally. So then why am I trying this keyboard so you don't have to? Well, when you buy a budget keyboard, you make some budget sacrifices. And just because something is good, doesn't mean you should buy it. Also, there's this keyboard, which we'll talk about more later. We'll also be talking more about our sponsor Shopify later, but not right now. Yeah. Now, when looking at reviews for this keyboard, I've seen literally everything, from calling it creamy, thocky, marbly, amazing, to saying it saves someone's marriage. I'm definitely not making that up. And I've actually had the Aula F75 just rotting on my shelf for months because Epomaker sent it out ages ago. And my first thought was, wow, this board is pretty neat, but why would anybody buy it? And that's the main question that we'll be tackling today, because this keyboard starts at $69.99. Nice. Now, I'll have it linked down below, but please don't buy it yet. Watch the full video because you're gonna wanna see this. Now, after quickly reading the whole manual, let's set the keyboard to the side and look at the accessories. Now, for a super cheap keyboard, I really wasn't expecting much. You get a cable, 2 switches, and a switch and keycap puller. So hopefully this thing is hot swap. And for the actual keyboard, I'm also not expecting that much. Although, in the last couple years, keyboards have gotten a lot better. Now, the first thing I notice is that it's surprisingly hefty and also surprisingly plastic. That's not surprising at all, though. And you'll notice this thing is a 75% keyboard, meaning that you get the F keys, you keep your arrow keys, but you get rid of your numpad and all of that other stuff. Now, I've prepared a super long list for you as to why this keyboard is so popular, and the list goes... The price? Okay, I'm joking, but there are 7 different color options and 3 different switch options, which you don't even see in some more expensive pre-builts nowadays. Now, I have the light blue theme, which has light blue accent keycaps and a white plastic chassis, and at a first glance, this does look like a better option than some other keyboards that you can get at this price point. But what really matters is the switches and the typing experience. Surprisingly, at this cheap price point though, you do get Bluetooth and 2.4 gigahertz, aka wireless modes for using this keyboard. And you also get flippy feet, which is a welcome addition if you like to adjust your typing angle. Now, as I mentioned before, the case is unapologetically plastic. However, it does feel a little bit solid when I'm tapping on it here. Like maybe there's some silicone or a heavy weight inside, which is also giving it its heft. Also, here's the flippy feet. Please go comment, good job on flipping those feet, Hipyo. Now, you'll also notice that this board has RGB, which is shockingly bright for this cheap of a keyboard. Now, the keycaps on this version aren't shine through, but they do have versions with that if that's interesting. Now, later in this video, I'll be taking this whole keyboard apart, comparing it to another budget keyboard, and checking out the switches. But you're probably wondering, how did this keyboard even get so popular? And where are they selling it? Well, part of that might be because they're using Shopify, the sponsor of this video. Now, Shopify is a commerce platform that lets you start your own business. And what does that even mean? Well, it lets you create a store online even if you're as dumb as me. Like, there's a reason that almost every single keyboard brand is using Shopify, because it makes starting a keyboard business incredibly easy. But it's more than that actually, because I was skeptical at first, so I signed up for the free trial at shopify.com/hipyotech. Yes, I used my own free trial link, please don't get mad at me, Shopify. And building out my merch store was so easy that I actually moved all of my merch to Shopify. This is a real website that I built in 8 hours using their tools. And actually, because Shopify is such a great widespread platform, and my good friend Kinetic Labs uses Shopify, I'm able to use the Shopify Collective plugin to sell my desk mats and keycaps directly from my store. And it took 5 minutes to set up. But also, all of my friends use Shopify. Literally. The Glarses Company, Shopify. Epic Gardening, Shopify. Aula, Shopify. So if you have an idea for a small business, or you just want to sell a product that you're passionate about, like these out of control mugs, look at this little guy, he's so out of control right now, then I dare you to go to shopify.com/hipyotech, build the coolest store possible, and email it to me. I genuinely want to see it. Just like I want to see how good this knob is. How good is it? Oh, it's actually kind of bad. Wait, huh? Now, usually knobs are really satisfying to turn, but this one just feels a little bit lackluster. It's also lackluster to push, and I've touched a lot of knobs, just like I've touched a lot of gaskets, and ooh, this one is giving me weird vibes. And this is where we start to run into things that could be an issue for some people. You see how this board is flexing, but like only in hotspots, like not across the whole board evenly. I'm assuming that's because of a flex cut PCB, but we'll see when we take this thing apart later, which is gonna be really easy, right? But first, let's go about the quality of the keycaps and the switches. Now, the keycaps are double shot cherry profile, and they're nothing to write home about. They're basically a $15 to $20 set of keycaps. They're probably gonna sound relatively clacky, they come in a couple good color options, and they're fine overall. Now for the switches though, this is where it gets pretty spicy. Oh no. Oh no, 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 no. Why would you put north-facing LEDs in 2020? So this thing is going in the garbage real quick, bye-bye. Is what I would have said, except this is 2024. Now, in the past, if your LEDs were north-facing, it meant that you couldn't use your keyboard with cherry profile keycaps. Well, kind of. But nowadays, a lot of switch manufacturers have actually fixed the issue, so you don't get interference in your middle row when using cherry profile keycaps. So let's talk about the switches. Now, I have the Leobog Reapers, which are a linear switch, and guess what? All of the options for this board are linear. So, you know, earlier when I said 3 switch options, yeah, they're all linear. They're also all at a glance eerily similar because they all have similar total travel distance, similar force, but the only difference between the Reapers is that the pre-travel is a little bit longer. However, these switches are buttery smooth, unlike the case after I slammed it on my desk. Wow. Although I personally found that typing on the Reaper switches wasn't the best experience, as that longer pre-travel just felt a little bit sluggish to me. Speaking of sluggish, the main thing that you're losing when you buy a budget keyboard like this is good software support. Now, I've tried a lot of really bad softwares in my time, and sometimes the bad, sketchy software is actually kind of decent. In this case, no. The Aula software sucks. It took like 5 seconds every time I wanted to save a color combination. Resetting macros was sluggish and annoying. So if you're someone that cares about tinkering with your keyboard in that way, then get a board that supports VIA, a better software. Now, I haven't gotten to try the TTC Crescents or the Leobog Ice Veins, so I can't comment on those, but maybe the Ice Veins will be a little bit better. Now, the plate-mounted stabilizers are very well secured. They don't rattle at all, and they sound absolutely incredible right out of the box. This is a really big plus actually, because if you're new to keyboards, then stabilizers are usually the hardest thing to get right. And on top of that, the price of lube, brushes, better stabilizers all add up really quickly if you're on a super tight budget. So generally my thoughts on this thing have been lukewarm, albeit a bit positive. I am being a bit harsh here because it is so cheap, but how do I get this thing open?
Where are the screws? Where are the screws?
There are none. Now, here's the first massive con for this thing, and it's that the modability of it is pretty stinking bad. In order to get it open, you need a pry tool, really strong rock climber fingers, or a little bit of both, and you risk damaging the case. It's not super easy, it's not super fun, but it is doable. Once you get the case open, however, it is... Wait, is this empty? Oh no, that's silicone. Hey, that's silicone. Hey! The bottom of the case is filled with a silicone dampening layer, which is my favorite way to mod a plastic keyboard because it makes it feel heavier and sound more thocky. And the back of this thing has some pour-on foam, which you could potentially peel off and tape mod, but I don't think that it's necessary here. Now, if you're new to keyboards, you're probably getting overwhelmed right now. You're like, why is he talking about foams? What is going on? Well, various foams and other materials are used to modify the sound of your keyboard to make it sound a little bit better, or just how you want it to sound in general. Peeling back this foam unfortunately reveals the sad reality. The PCB is flex cut, and it's really weird flex cuts at that, which is why it felt so hot spotty. This can give your keyboard a little bit of a thinner sound, but I honestly didn't notice it here at all. Now, first, let's go ahead and put this thing back together with some magic. 1 subscribe equals 1 magic. See, did you see the subscribe button lit up there? That was cool. Now, to be fair, I did get mad that this thing isn't very moddable. However, there really aren't that many mods you would do to it. But if you do, you might end up with a scuffed bottom case like I'm pointing out here. Yikes. If you spend an extra $30 or so, then you could get a fully aluminum keyboard that would have screws. Now, I'll be comparing this keyboard to another one in a second, but let's talk about the sound. This thing has no right sounding as good as it does. And this is probably the actual reason that most of you have been telling me to try this thing, because what I realized is the people asking me to try this keyboard actually already own it. Like, you guys don't want me to review this thing because you want to buy it. You want me to review this thing to tell you that you made a good purchasing decision. Is that crazy?
I don't know. It sounds kind of crazy.
So if I told you it sucked, would that hurt your feelings? Sorry, I'm just playing with you. Or am I? Because there's a lot of keyboards out there that are really good. Now, let me just use this as an example because it was sitting on my shelf. Yes, I have 200 keyboards on my shelf. What are you getting mad at me? Now, it's not a one-to-one comparison because this board is $13 more expensive, but the Royal Kludge M75, wow, it already is on when I turned it on, is a board that I think covers all the same bases, but I prefer just a little bit more. And I'm using this to show you how important preference is and why you shouldn't just buy a keyboard because you saw it on TikTok or something. But if you thought the Aula F75 was cool, this board looks more visually appealing to me. It has some cool touches that just look more interesting. Its knob isn't ugly. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's still a plastic keyboard. It still has flippy feet. We're still covering a lot of the same bases that the Aula F75 does, but nobody talks about this keyboard, ever. Also, the gasket performance is more even, and I like that. It also has a little screen that's virtually useless. When you're buying a keyboard, what's important is to determine what matters to you the most. The problem is, that's usually feel, and you can't determine that over the internet. That's obviously a huge problem, and why I focus so much on sound in keyboards, because if a keyboard sounds scratchy, then it probably doesn't feel smooth. Or if a keyboard sounds super pingy, then it probably doesn't have the soft gasket absorption that you might get from a more premium keyboard. But ultimately, there's a myriad of other factors like software support. Do the keycaps look nice? Does the knob feel good when you touch it? Does the brand have good customer support, which none of these brands do? Do I have the ability to take this thing apart easily and fix it if it has any issues? And ultimately, that brings me back around to the Aula F75 and any budget keyboard in general. You're making some degree of sacrifices, so it's not gonna be the perfect best keyboard ever. Now, I'll show you how both of these keyboards sound in a second, but ultimately I prefer the Royal Kludge, but this is just one example that I pulled out of my closet and isn't really important to the video. What you came here to see is me telling you whether or not the Aula F75 is a good deal, and whether or not if you bought it, you made a smart decision. And you know what? Yes, it's a fine keyboard. It sounds really nice. It feels pretty decent. It cuts a lot of corners. But if you're on a tight budget and you bought it, you should be happy. And please stop commenting about it.